So here to help us all make sense of it, Ethan Harris is head of global economics at BofA Research, along with our very own Steve Leisman. Welcome to both of you. Ethan, kick things off for us. Why do you think the Fed should keep tightening here?
Well, I think the economy is slowing down. I mean, there have been some pretty wild signals in the data lately, but as you pointed out, if you kind of run through the numbers, things are slowing down. But we're not in a recession yet. And I think the real problem the Fed's facing right now is that they're not getting the labor market under control. You talked about jobless claims, 186,000. That's an incredibly low number. And we're likely to get another strong jobs report next week. And you can't really cure the inflation problem unless you rebalance the labor market. And that's the challenge of the Fed. The economy's slowing down, but the labor market is still too hot.
Ethan, it's still striking if you go through the NBER's data. There's about 6 monthly metrics they use. A lot of them are in real terms. And most of them, I would say all but 2 of them on the employment side have actually peaked. I mean, we're talking about a business cycle that is essentially stalling out, except to me, it feels like it just hasn't shown up in the employment data yet.
I think that's right. I think about the job market in the last few years. I mean, companies had a miserable time finding employees, and so they've got a lot of pent-up demand for workers. Now, business is slowing, but they're not ready to stop the hiring. I mean, you talk about Hasbro laying off some people and some of the tech companies laying off people, but most companies are still hiring because they weren't able to fill their jobs. So the labor market's a very slow, lagging indicator of where the economy's heading.
Steve, weigh in on this. And I should add that people are going, OK, we've got the data pointing one way to a slowdown, sort of X the employment side. And even there, things are obviously slowing, payrolls wise. Then you, on the other hand, have things like MasterCard and Visa and American Express. I pointed out this morning that Visa in April 2008 said they didn't see any signs of a slowdown in their data. They didn't think the economy was in recession. We had been in recession for 5 months at that point. And people are saying that's a ridiculous and ludicrous comparison to make. So I'm curious what you think.
I've been confused about all this as you are. I mean, I was sort of ready to write off the consumer till I saw that credit card data you said, Kelly. I saw that this morning. That Amex number was very good. The Visa, MasterCard data is good. I mean, one way to think about this is like a batter up to the plate, and it's 2 strikes and 1 ball. So if you think about October was a huge month for the consumer, and November and December, they've come off. Does that mean he sits down? No, he's still got another strike left, at least 1 more. So you look at the spending numbers. It's one way to say, you have these big Social Security payments coming in this month. That could help the consumer. You still have strong employment. You still have decent wage gains. So I guess I'm just, and given the credit card data you brought up, Kelly, just not ready to write off the consumer yet, considering there's this possibility that what we saw in November and December was a pause. I agree with Ethan. There is definitely a weakening, but whether or not that weakening means we go down to 0 on GDP or negative, I think that's still a question that's out there. I know the Atlanta Fed brought down their first quarter to 0.7. I've seen others even be negative for the first quarter. Just not ready to write off. You show me January, I think the consumer may have a chance of coming back here, and we might still have some decent numbers ahead of us.
Yeah, I guess, Ethan, I wonder, when we know that we're already slowing, why do we need to keep hiking rates, right? Because we haven't yet seen to what point the slowdown is going to go. Why does the Fed feel like it needs to sort of push harder in that direction?
Well, I think that the Fed just needs to keep tapping the brakes. I mean, let's think about this. In a normal cycle, they do hike by 25 basis points a meeting. They're now slowing down to a point where they can actually assess the data as they go along. They no longer have their foot planted in the accelerator. But I don't think they can argue that they've finished the job. And again, it comes back to this really lopsided economy we have right now, where a lot of things have slowed down, but job market hasn't. And that the Fed doesn't hate the job market, but it is the part of the economy that's completely out of balance still. I think we should take Powell at his word when he says he wants to finish the job of getting inflation under control. I think he has learned quite a lesson in the last year about falling behind the curve and then making sure you do your job of being, the only institution that really cares about inflation. So I don't think they're going to be slamming the brakes here. I think they're going to feel their way forward. We've got them hiking 3 more times and then they're done. But I do think they have a little more work to do.